Ready to unlock some serious profitability in your veterinary practice? We're talking hitting that sweet spot of 18% or less for your COGs.
COGs.
That's cost of goods sold for anyone new to the game. You sent over some really interesting stuff on this, especially that COGs for one-man practice optimizer.pdf document. Think of this deep dive like it's like a treasure map.
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
And those COGs, they're buried treasure. We're going to help you find them. We're arming you with the tools to pinpoint exactly where to dig in your practice for those hidden profits.
I love that analogy. You're right. This document is packed with great strategies, and it's not just about crunching numbers. It's about making smart decisions, strategic decisions that really impact your bottom line.
Exactly. And one of the first things that jumped out, at least for me, was the emphasis on pricing. Specifically, really understanding your pricing power. It feels like something a lot of veterinary professionals kind of shy away from, but it's so crucial for a healthy practice.
It really is. This document, it really encourages you to own your worth. One strategy they highlight is the power of even small price increases, especially for your most popular services. I was reading that increasing the price of, say, your most popular wellness plan by even just $10, that could mean an extra $10,000 per year for a practice that's seeing a healthy client load.
Wow, $10,000 just from a small tweak like that.
Absolutely. Those small adjustments, they add up fast.
That's incredible. I bet most practices would be thrilled with an extra $10,000 in their pocket. And speaking of being strategic, the document also mentions this idea of rolling price increases.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So it's all about timing, staying ahead of the game. Instead of playing catch up when suppliers raise their prices, which, let's be honest, seems to happen like clockwork every January, this document recommends implementing smaller price increases, but doing it in November.
So you're ahead of the curve.
Exactly. You're not scrambling to adjust your fees after the fact. It's proactive, not reactive. You're protecting your profit margin.
Love it. It's like that old saying, the early bird gets the worm. Or in this case, the early bird protects their profits. Okay, so we've tackled pricing, but there's another biggie that can really make or break those COGs. Inventory management.
Oh, for sure.
I can already hear some of you nodding along, picturing those moments when you're like wrist deep in dog treats, desperately searching for that last roll of gauze.
Frustrating, right?
Inventory control, it can definitely feel like a never-ending battle, but this document, it offers some really valuable strategies. It all starts with regular inventory reviews, making sure you have enough of those high-turnover items on hand, but not going overboard. And when it comes to pricing, they're big on using a consistent markup, like a multiple of the actual cost plus a dispensing fee.
No more guesstimating. I like it.
Yeah.
But what about those times when you're just in the thick of it and it feels impossible to stay on top of every single syringe and suture pack? Well, that's where rolling counts come in. It's a system for continuous inventory tracking, and it can really help you prevent those dreaded moments of either having way too much stock or, just as bad, running out of those really important items.
So it's about creating a system that actually works for you in your practice.
Exactly.
And this document, it actually suggests conducting monthly rolling counts for those really high volume items, the things you're constantly reaching for, and then quarterly counts for everything else. It keeps those high demand items top of mind without turning inventory management into like a full-time job.
Exactly. And to make things even smoother, the document highlights using those standardized codes for tracking your inventory, like the ones recommended by the American Animal Hospital Association, so AAAHA, and the Veterinary Management Group's VMG.
Right, those standardized codes.
Yeah. They ensure consistency, and they keep everything nice and clear in your financial records, so you always have an accurate picture of what you've got and how it's all impacting your bottom line.
Okay, so we're connecting those inventory counts to those standardized codes. It's all about organization. And speaking of organization, let's talk about another area where strategic decisions can make a huge difference: lab and pharmacy operations.
Oh, absolutely. This is an area where practices, I think, often leave money on the table without even realizing it.
Really?
Yeah. One of the biggest things they highlight is this idea of outsourcing specific lab tests.
Interesting. So working smarter, not necessarily harder. Just because you have the equipment to run a specific test in-house doesn't always mean you should.
Exactly. Sometimes outsourcing to a specialized lab can actually save you money in the long run, especially when you consider things like equipment maintenance, reagent costs, staff time. Plus, you can often negotiate better pricing with these external labs, especially if you're consolidating multiple tests.
Makes sense.
The document even encourages you to really compare those costs and to favor external labs whenever it makes financial sense.
So it's like that buy one get one mentality, but for saving your practice money.
Exactly.
Now that's what I call a smart business move. And while we're talking about smart moves, this document also highlights something that I think often gets overlooked when we talk about profitability, and that's recognizing and appropriately valuing the services you provide.
Oh, absolutely. It's so easy to undervalue your expertise, especially, I think, in this field where you're so passionate about what you do, about helping animals. But the reality is, your skills and your knowledge, they're worth something.
They absolutely are.
You need to charge for them.
Right. And one of the ways this document suggests reflecting that value, that specialized care that you provide, is by actually differentiating your pricing for wellness tests versus tests for sick animals.
Okay.
So, for example, you might charge a slightly higher fee for a sick animal test because it often requires additional expertise, more of your time, and potentially even those life-saving diagnostics.
It's subtle, but it's a powerful way to really communicate the value that you bring to every single patient interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not just about what you charge for those specific services. It's also about how you manage your time and resources to really maximize efficiency.
Right. Absolutely.
And that brings us to another key takeaway from this document. Speaking of managing time and resources, this document dives into something called drop-off appointments.
Huh?
I have to admit, when I first read that, I was a little, I don't know.
Skeptical.
Yeah. Like, is this really a game changer for profitability?
Well, it can be. Think about it. How often are your clients, those busy pet owners, how often are they rearranging their entire day just to make it to an appointment?
Well, all the time, right?
Drop off appointments, they give people that flexibility. And it allows your team to really optimize their workflow. So instead of trying to squeeze appointments into an already jam-packed schedule,
Yeah.
you can create a much smoother, more efficient flow throughout the day.
It's like you're working with the realities of people's busy lives instead of against them. And I bet that reduces a lot of stress for everybody. Clients, patients, the veterinary team, everybody wins. But streamlining isn't just about appointments, right? This document also talks about using technology to increase efficiency, which I am all for. Anything that means I spend less time wrestling with my printer, I'm on board.
Right. This document, they're all about encouraging practices to embrace technology that can really streamline those everyday tasks, freeing up your team so they can really focus on what matters, which is patient care and interacting with clients.
Okay, so paint me a picture. What would that look like?
Imagine automated client history forms, AI-assisted note-taking, online appointment scheduling.
Sign me up. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Like having a virtual assistant who handles all that administrative stuff so you can get back to what you're good at, providing that top-notch care. And speaking of top-notch care, we've got to make sure we're pricing those services effectively. We talked earlier about rolling price increases.
Right.
But this document, it actually goes even deeper into those pricing reviews.
Yeah, it's not just about periodically raising prices across the board. It's about being much more strategic and data-driven. They recommend doing a thorough margin analysis for each of your key service categories. So think pharmacy, lab work, imaging, stuff like that.
Okay.
Look at your historical data, factor in your current product costs, and then make sure you're applying a consistent markup and dispensing fee.
It's like giving your pricing strategy a checkup, making sure it's still in tip-top shape.
Exactly.
Aligned with your costs, aligned with your financial goals. I like it. And this actually reminds me of something else we talked about. Accurately classifying expenses and rebates. You can't make those smart pricing decisions if you don't have a solid foundation of financial data.
100%. It all comes back to having that really clear, accurate picture of your finances. And speaking of clear pictures, remember those rolling counts for inventory management? We talked about how often to do them, but this document, it also gets into some really good stuff about actually streamlining that process.
Because, let's be honest, nobody wants to spend all day counting cotton balls. So how do we make those rolling counts as painless as possible?
Well, the key is to make it a routine, not a chore. So this document, it suggests incorporating those monthly counts, those ones for your high-volume items, incorporating them into your staff's regular duties.
Okay.
Maybe it's something your team tackles for, 30 minutes every week. And remember those standardized AAHAVMG chart of account codes?
Oh, right.
Using those, make sure that you're categorizing everything consistently and that you're adjusting your inventory on your financial statements. So those counts, they have a real impact.
There it is. It all connects. Those standardized codes are not just for organization. They create this system where those rolling counts actually contribute to a clear financial picture.
I love it. And while we're on this theme of connecting the dots, the document also emphasizes this in your lab and pharmacy operations too. Absolutely. When it comes to lab tests, they really get into the nitty-gritty of comparing in-house versus external lab costs. And again, it's not about outsourcing everything without thinking. It's about making informed decisions, looking at those costs. Because sometimes it truly does make more sense financially to send certain tests to an external lab, especially when you factor in things like equipment maintenance, staff expertise, all of that.
You got to know your numbers.
Yes.
Just because you can do a test doesn't mean you should, right?
100%. And it's not just about the individual tests. The document actually recommends consolidating your lab tests whenever you can to negotiate better pricing from those external providers.
Oh, interesting.
Remember we talked about that buy one, get one mentality earlier?
Right, right.
Same principle applies here. The more tests you can bundle, the more leverage you have when you're negotiating those rates.
The power of negotiation. A good life skill in general.
Truly. You can never go wrong with that. But, while we're on the topic of valuable skills, this document also talks about the importance of having a well-trained staff and making sure you're using their skills effectively. Because your team is your most valuable asset.
So true. We can't talk about profitability without acknowledging the amazing teams that keep practices running. So what kind of insights did you find in here about maximizing that staff efficiency?
One thing they suggest is to, think about how you're pairing up your staff. Try pairing more experienced technicians with those who are maybe a little newer, still learning the ropes, that classic mentorship model.
I love that. It's like a win-win-win. Those newer team members, they're getting incredible hands-on experience. The seasoned pros, they get to share all that hard-earned wisdom, and the practice benefits from a more efficient and knowledgeable team overall.
Exactly. That teamwork, that mentorship, it's not just good for morale, it's good for your bottom line too. By helping your team work to their full potential, you're creating a more efficient, more productive, and ultimately more profitable practice. And speaking of profitability, there's something I keep seeing throughout this document. They keep mentioning a DVM success platform. Have you heard of this?
I have, and I have to say, I'm very curious. It seems like it could be a super valuable resource. Maybe it's software or an online platform specifically designed for veterinary practices.
Yeah.
To help improve operations and, of course, you guessed it, boost profitability.
Yeah, it's definitely something worth looking into for sure. But maybe before we go down that rabbit hole, we should take a quick pause and come back refreshed for the final part of our deep dive into these hidden profits.
Sounds good to me. All right, so we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into uncovering those hidden profits in your veterinary practice.
Let's do it.
We've talked about everything from pricing strategies to inventory mastery. Oh, and of course, the importance of a strong team. But this document, it's got a few more nuggets of wisdom to share.
It's like we're panning for gold here, and every section reveals a new treasure. And one of the last, but definitely not least, nuggets this document emphasizes. Those three little letters, KPIs.
KPIs. Those key performance indicators. I get it. They can sound a little intimidating.
Right.
But you're right. Understanding your KPIs, it's like having a financial dashboard for your practice.
Exactly. Think about it. You wouldn't drive a car without a speedometer or a fuel gauge, would you?
Definitely not a good idea.
KPIs, they give you that same level of insight, but into your practice's financial health. They help you track your progress, see where you can improve, and then make those data-driven decisions that really, truly drive profitability. And that the document's very clear on this. Regularly reviewing your financial statements and those KPIs. Non-negotiable for a thriving practice.
It's about staying in the driver's seat, like you said. Being proactive, not reactive. Love it. And speaking of being proactive, this document also reminds us to regularly review our expense classifications.
Yes. It's easy to just set it and forget it when it comes to how you're categorizing those expenses, but things change. New expenses pop up, services evolve, and your tracking system needs to keep up.
So you're not just setting up a system, you're maintaining it, fine-tuning it as you go. And this actually reminds me of something else we touched on earlier, being mindful of how you're allocating those rebates.
Oh, absolutely. Rebates can be great, but only if they're being allocated correctly. It's like this.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to accidentally deposit a client's payment into the wrong account, right?
Big problem.
Same principle applies to these rebates. Make sure those savings are being categorized back into the right place, the right cost of goods, the right expense categories. That way, your financial records actually reflect how your practice is really doing.
Again, it's all about having that clear picture. And that seems to be the recurring theme throughout this whole deep dive, wouldn't you say? Having that clear financial picture is the foundation for making smart decisions that ultimately unlock profitability.
100%. This document, it's been like a treasure map. It's guided us through these key areas where optimizing those COGs can make a world of difference in your practice. We've explored strategic pricing, we've tackled inventory management, talked about streamlining operations, having a great team, and of course, those all-important financial KPIs. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And speaking of journeys, should we circle back to that DVM success platform that was mentioned throughout this document?
You know what? I think we should. We've uncovered so much already, but it seems like DVM Success could have even more tools, more insights to help you on that journey towards a truly successful practice.
It's like having a secret weapon or a trusted advisor in your corner. So, to all our listeners out there, if you're ready to take your practice to the next level, check out DVM Success. See what it's all about. It could be exactly what you need to boost those profits and achieve your goals.
Couldn't agree more. Remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to building a thriving veterinary practice.
And on that note, we're wrapping up this deep dive into unlocking hidden profits. We hope you found it insightful, useful, and maybe even a little inspiring. Until next time, keep those tails wagging and those profits soaring.